Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 188 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. How do you find the time? How do you find the time? Man, I hear that a lot from people. How do you find the time to do the creative work that you do? How do you find the time to do the creative work that you want to do? And I often hear other photographers say things like, I don't have time to be creative. I don't have time to do the work that I want to do. And it's true, most of our lives are so busy that we often feel we don't have the time that we'd like to devote to our creative selves every day. So, do you take the time to be creative every day? Do you make the time to be creative every day? Because the creative act is worth taking the time for. It's worth making the time for. That creative act, that act of being in the creative moment, is what holds us up and it keeps us going in life. Thousands and thousands of creative people are forced to make the time to create because their lives are so busy, because there are so many other things pulling at their time. And it's worth it to make that time, to create that time to be creative, because of what it gives us and also what we give back to the world as creative people. And certainly our world today is confusing enough and troubling enough that the creative act can help us make sense of it, can help us calm our own inner selves, and can give the world something beyond the sort of confusing and confounding aspects of the contemporary world that we live in. And is creativity only relegated to the making of photographs? I think no. I think that while we think of the steps of making the photographs, editing the take, finishing the details on the images as being a creative act, there is also creativity in the number of other things that we sometimes don't give ourselves the time to do. Reading, writing, doing research on a topic of interest, discovering places or things that you might want to explore, looking at the work of other photographers, even just sitting and letting your mind wander. These things all take time, and it is time that you're spending in being creative, even if you're not pressing the shutter release button, even if you're not manipulating images in Lightroom or Photoshop or the darkroom. A book that I'm currently reading is called The Memoirs of Hadrian. It is a spectacular piece of historical fiction by the French author Marguerite Yourcenar. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, you French speakers out there. And this book has prompted me to think about one of my favorite photographic subjects, the architecture of Italy, in new and different ways. In the book, Hadrian, one of the greatest Roman emperors, reflects on his life of travel, cultural exploration, and, yes, building great and inspiring monuments. And it's his view of what monuments he built and why he built them and how he got them built that really changes my sense of what these buildings are. It is, in fact, creative research in my own discipline, yet it's also a creative act in and of itself, reading this book. So I urge you to study what makes the world look and move and operate as it does, because it's in that study, that thought process that comes before, during, and after we photograph, that separates us from the rest of the people who just happen to have a camera. If you understand what you want to photograph and why you want to photograph it, and you have a grasp of how your work might have an impact on someone else's comprehension of the world, and of course on your own, you're far ahead of the standard issue person with a camera that we all see everywhere, especially these days in the sort of golden age of photography, where photography is ubiquitous in our world. So give yourself permission to be creative and give yourself the time to make creative work, even if it's just a few minutes a day of reflection or reading or photographing or looking at photographs or working on your photographs. That time is creative time that can help you feel the fulfillment we all seek as creative people. And even better, if you can arrange your life schedule to create several days or even a week or more to devote to those things. That's the ultimate creative recharge. Speaking of which, since 2009, some great people have taken some time for themselves, by spending a week with me in Italy, photographing, critiquing, talking about photography, and learning on one of my Italy photography workshops. Intriguingly, each year, about 60% of my participants in these workshops have already participated in one before. In my conversations with those alumni workshoppers, they say that it's not only the experiences we get to have, but also the way that a week in Italy, concentrating on photography, allows them to recharge their creativity. In fact, when I opened up registration for my 2017 workshops a few weeks ago, a couple of them filled within hours, all with returning workshoppers. There are, in fact, a few spaces left for my 2017 Italy photo workshops, and as I record this, there are a couple of spaces left in the May 26th to June 2nd workshops in Sicily, and just 3 spaces left in the June 17 to June 24 workshop in northwestern Tuscany as well, based out of the amazingly beautiful walled Tuscan town of Lucca, with day trips to the marble town of Carrara, the mountain village of Barga, and a visit to the stunningly beautiful Cinque Terre on the coast in Liguria as well. Perhaps you'll join us. Perhaps you'll take the time for your creative self and join us in Italy for a week of learning, recharging, photographing, and understanding about photography in different ways. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography.